Germany was supposed to be Europe's economic machine. For decades, the formula seemed almost unbeatable. Cheap energy, world-class engineering, powerful manufacturers, and an enormous export machine selling German cars, chemicals, and industrial equipment across the world. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BASF, Siemens. These companies didn't just make Germany rich, they helped make Germany the industrial heart of Europe. But something has changed. Growth has become painfully weak. German manufacturers are facing higher costs. Competition from China is becoming much harder. And one of Germany's most important export relationships is moving in the wrong direction. In the first 5 months of 2026, German exports to China fell 14.5%. German vehicle exports to China fell 26.1%. Meanwhile, Germany imported more from China than before, and that reveals something much bigger. Germany isn't simply going through another bad year. The economic model that made Germany incredibly successful is being forced to change, and if Germany can't figure out what comes next, the consequences won't stop at Germany's borders. To understand the problem, you first have to understand why Germany became so successful. Germany built something unusual. While many rich Western economies became increasingly dominated by services, Germany remained an industrial powerhouse. Cars, chemicals, machinery, electrical equipment, precision engineering. Germany became exceptionally good at making complicated things the rest of the world wanted. And underneath this machine were three enormous advantages: energy, exports, engineering. For years, German factories benefited from relatively cheap Russian energy. German companies then transformed that energy into high-value manufactured products, and many of those products were exported to the world's fastest-growing economies, especially China. It was an incredible combination. Russia helped supply the energy, Germany supplied the engineering, China supplied enormous demand, but then all three parts of that formula began changing. Germany's industrial economy requires enormous amounts of energy. That's especially important for industries like chemicals, steel, glass, and manufacturing. Then Russia invaded Ukraine. Europe dramatically reduced its dependence on Russian energy, and Germany suddenly had to adapt. The old energy relationship was broken. Germany found alternatives. The feared catastrophe didn't happen, but the economics changed. Energy-intensive manufacturers were now operating in a much more difficult environment. And in 2026, another energy shock complicated the recovery. The Bundesbank warned in June that higher energy prices were once again hurting household purchasing power and increasing costs for German companies. But expensive energy isn't Germany's only problem, because something even more important was happening on the other side of the world. For years, China was one of the greatest opportunities German industry had ever seen. As China's middle class expanded, demand exploded. German cars became status symbols. German machinery helped power Chinese factories. German engineering had exactly what a rapidly industrializing China needed. But China didn't stay the same. Chinese companies learned. They scaled. They improved. And eventually, some of Germany's customers became its competitors. Nowhere is that clearer than cars. China has become a global force in electric vehicles, and Germany's automotive industry is suddenly competing against companies that can move incredibly quickly in batteries, software, and EV manufacturing. The trade numbers show how dramatically the relationship is changing. Between January and May 2026, Germany exported around 29.6 billion euros of goods to China. That's down 14.5% from a year earlier. German automotive exports to China fell even faster, 26.1%. Meanwhile, German imports from China reached 72.4 billion euros. Germany's import surplus with China widened to 42.8 billion euros in only 5 months. Think about that reversal. China was once the enormous market German manufacturers couldn't wait to enter. Now, China is increasingly one of the competitors they have to survive, and that's a much harder problem to solve. Here's where the story becomes more complicated. If you look only at today's economic numbers, Germany doesn't look like a country collapsing. In fact, some recent numbers have improved. German industrial production increased again in June 2026. Exports also rose, and the Bundesbank says the economy has shown more resilience than previously expected. So why worry? Because Germany's biggest problem isn't necessarily recession, it's growth. The Bundesbank currently expects calendar-adjusted real GDP growth of just 0.5% in 2026, 0.8% in 2027, before reaching 1.4% in 2028. Even more revealing is Germany's estimated potential growth. The Bundesbank puts it at only around 0.4% in 2026, falling to roughly 0.3% in 2027 and 2028. Why so low? The Bundesbank points to structural problems: an aging population, shortages of skilled workers, high labor costs, high energy costs, bureaucracy, weak private investment, and increasing international competition, particularly from China. That's the real German problem, not collapse, stagnation. And this creates a brutal dilemma. Germany needs to transform its economy, but transforming an economy built around enormous industrial companies is incredibly incredibly difficult. Take automobiles. Germany became one of the world's greatest automotive powers by perfecting the internal combustion engine. Engines, transmissions, mechanical engineering, supplier networks, entire towns and hundreds of thousands of jobs grew around this system. Then the competitive battlefield changed. Electric vehicles require different technologies. Batteries matter more. Software matters more. Manufacturing speed matters. China built enormous capabilities in precisely these areas. Germany now has to defend the old business while simultaneously building the new one, and that costs enormous amounts of money. The same problem exists elsewhere. Factories need cheaper and more reliable energy. The country needs infrastructure. Companies need skilled workers. Germany needs investment, which explains why the government is now betting heavily on fiscal stimulus, including infrastructure and defense spending. The Bundesbank estimates additional fiscal expansion could contribute around 1.3 percentage points to cumulative GDP growth through 2028, but money alone can't fix everything, because Germany isn't just fighting an economic cycle, it's fighting time. And this is where Germany's problem becomes Europe's problem. Germany isn't some small, isolated economy, it's Europe's largest. Its factories buy components from other European countries. Its consumers buy European products. Its companies employ people across the continent. Its banks finance businesses. And German industrial supply chains stretch across borders. So when German industry slows, the impact doesn't necessarily stay in Germany. Suppliers feel it. Exporters feel it. Investment can weaken. And Europe loses strength in one of the areas where it has historically competed best, advanced manufacturing. This is why Germany's struggle is bigger than GDP. It's really about Europe's position in the global economy. The United States dominates many of the world's largest technology platforms. China has become extraordinarily powerful in manufacturing, batteries, solar technology, and electric vehicles. Europe is caught between them, and Germany is supposed to be one of Europe's strongest industrial weapons. So what happens if that weapon becomes weaker? Here's the important part. Germany is not finished. Far from it. This is still one of the world's richest and most technologically sophisticated economies. It has extraordinary companies, deep engineering expertise, highly skilled workers, strong institutions, and some recent indicators suggest the economy is beginning to recover. Exports rose for a fifth consecutive month in June 2026, while automotive production increased sharply that month. So this isn't a story about Germany disappearing, it's a story about whether Germany can reinvent the machine that made it successful. Because the old formula was incredibly powerful. Cheap energy, German engineering, Chinese demand, but the world that created that formula no longer exists. Energy is more uncertain. China is now a competitor as well as a customer. The population is aging, and the industries of the future don't necessarily reward the same strengths as the industries of the past. Germany spent decades perfecting one of the most successful economic machines in modern history. Now comes the harder challenge, building the next one. And Germany doesn't have unlimited time.